John Wayne Gacy spent 14 years on death row, his name forever tied to the horror of his crimes. But to understand how a man became the killer clown, we need to go back to the beginning, where a troubled boy grew into a monster. Before we dive in, please take a moment to like and subscribe to be a part of our growing community. Also, drop a comment of where you're tuning in from. John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, the second of 3 children and the only son of John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robison. His father was a machinist and World War I veteran, a man of Polish descent who worked hard but carried a dark side. His mother, of Danish heritage, was a homemaker who poured love into her children. The Gacy family lived in a working-class neighborhood on Chicago's North Side, a place where kids played in the streets and families attended Catholic church together. On the surface, it seemed like a typical American upbringing. But beneath that surface, cracks were already forming. John's father was an alcoholic, and his rages filled the house with fear. He was verbally and physically abusive, especially toward John, whom he saw as weak and not man enough. He called John dumb and stupid, comparing him unfavorably to his sisters, Joanne and Karen. One of John's earliest memories was at age 4, when his father beat him for accidentally messing up car engine parts. These attacks weren't rare. John Sr. would drink alone in the basement, sometimes talking to imaginary friends from the war, then lash out at his family. Marion tried to shield her son, showering him with affection, but her love couldn't erase the sting of his father's cruelty. Did this constant belittling plant the seeds of John's need for control later in life? John's health didn't help. At age 11, he was hit in the head by a swing, causing a blood clot in his brain that went undiagnosed until he was 16. For 5 years, he suffered blackouts, collapsing without warning. His father dismissed these as faked attempts to get attention, mocking him even more. At 17, doctors found a nonspecific heart condition, adding to John's sense of being different, weaker than others. He couldn't play sports like other boys, which isolated him further and fueled his father's scorn. Was this when John started to hide his pain behind a mask? At 18, he briefly worked as a mortuary janitor in Las Vegas, later claiming he'd been alone with bodies, treating them as just dead things. What was it about death that drew him in? By his late teens, John's life was a mix of ambition and anger. He dropped out of high school in his sophomore year at Prosser Vocational High School, unable to keep up. He left Chicago for Las Vegas, chasing a fresh start, but returned after a few months. Back home, he enrolled in Northwestern Business College, graduating in the early 1960s. He worked as a shoe salesman, charming customers with a smile that hid his pain. At 22, he married Marlynn Myers, a co-worker whose father owned Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants. The couple moved to Waterloo, Iowa, where John managed the restaurants and joined the local JCs, climbing their ranks with his knack for leadership. But beneath this success, something darker was brewing. In 1968, John was charged with sodomizing a teenage boy, his first known crime. Was this the moment his hidden urges broke free? John Wayne Gacy's descent into crime began in 1968 in Waterloo, Iowa, where he lived with his wife, Marlynn, and their 2 young children. In May 1968, Gacy committed his first documented crime at age 26. Gacy had a reputation as a hard-working businessman, often hosting JC's parties at his home. But he used these gatherings to target vulnerable young men. One night, Gacy invited a 16-year-old boy, Donald Voorhees, the son of a fellow JC, to his house. Gacy lured Donald to the basement under the pretense of showing him pornographic films, a tactic he used to exploit curiosity. After giving Donald alcohol, Gacy coerced him into sexual acts. The assault took place in the dimly lit basement, surrounded by tools and restaurant supplies, a space Gacy controlled completely. His motive was sexual gratification, fueled by urges he'd suppressed since his teens, compounded by a need to dominate others. Donald didn't report the incident immediately, but Gacy's confidence grew. He assaulted Donald multiple times over months, using gifts and money to ensure silence. Gacy's charm, honed from years of sales and community work, helped him manipulate his victim. But in August 1968, Donald told his father. The Voorhees family went to the police, and Gacy was arrested for sodomy. He denied the charges, claiming Donald was lying, but the evidence was strong. Gacy's motive wasn't just sexual. It was about power, proving he could control someone completely, unlike the powerlessness he felt under his father's abuse. Was this the first time he crossed the line, or had there been others who stayed silent? While awaiting trial, Gacy's arrogance led to his next crime. Determined to silence Donald, he paid an 18-year-old employee, Dwight Anderson, $300 to intimidate the boy. In September 1968, Dwight lured Donald to a secluded area outside Waterloo and beat him, warning him not to testify. The plan backfired when Donald reported the attack, and Dwight confessed Gacy's involvement. Gacy was charged with witness intimidation, adding to his legal troubles. This move showed Gacy's desperation to protect his image as a family man and community leader. He couldn't bear the thought of his secret life being exposed. In December 1968, Gacy's trial came. Facing overwhelming evidence, he pleaded guilty to the sodomy charge. The court sentenced him to 10 years at Anamosa State Penitentiary, a men's reformatory in Iowa. His wife, Marlene, filed for divorce, and he lost contact with his children. His father-in-law fired him, and the JCs expelled him. But even in prison, Gacy's manipulative nature thrived. He became a model inmate, organizing activities and earning parole after just 18 months in June 1970. He returned to Chicago, free but already plotting his next steps. After moving back to Chicago, Gacy rebuilt his life. He lived with his mother in Norwood Park, started a construction business called PDM Contractors, and married Carol Hoff, a divorcee with 2 daughters, in 1972. He joined community groups, volunteering as a Democratic precinct captain and entertaining as Pogo the Clown at children's parties. But his criminal behavior resurfaced, now more calculated. In January 1972, Gacy committed his first known murder. He picked up a teenage boy, Timothy McCoy, at a Chicago bus station. Gacy offered him a place to stay for the night at his home on 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. In the early hours, Gacy lured Timothy to his bedroom, claiming it was for a drink and conversation. There, he stabbed Timothy to death. Gacy later claimed it was self-defense, saying Timothy approached him with a knife, but no evidence supported this. He hid the body in the crawl space beneath his house, a chilling choice that became his signature. His motive was a mix of sexual desire and a thrill in taking a life, a step beyond his earlier assaults. Why did he escalate to murder so quickly? Over the next few years, Gacy's crimes grew bolder. He targeted young men and boys, often runaways or those looking for work. His method was consistent. He'd offer jobs through his construction business, invite them to his home, or pick them up from the streets. At his house, he'd ply them with alcohol or drugs, sometimes using chloroform to subdue them. He'd then assault them, often killing them to ensure silence. By 1975, he'd murdered at least 2 more victims, hiding their bodies in the crawl space. By 1978, John Wayne Gacy's double life as a respected contractor and serial killer was unraveling. The investigation that led to his arrest began with a single missing person case in Des Plaines, Illinois, a suburb near his Norwood Park home. On December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Pius vanished after telling his mother he was meeting a contractor about a job. That contractor was Gacy. His mother, Elizabeth, alerted the Des Plaines police, sparking an investigation that would expose one of America's worst serial killers. Police quickly linked Gacy to Robert's disappearance. Robert had been seen at Nissan's pharmacy, where Gacy had been discussing a remodeling job. Witnesses confirmed Gacy was the last person to see Robert alive. Detectives visited Gacy's home on December 12th, asking to speak with him. Gacy was calm, denying any knowledge of Robert, but his nervous demeanor raised suspicions. The police learned of Gacy's 1968 sodomy conviction in Iowa, which flagged him as a person of interest. They began surveillance, following him around the clock. Clues piled up fast. A search of Gacy's home on December 13th revealed disturbing items. A high school ring that didn't belong to him, a receipt for a rug later traced to a missing boy, and a collection of pornographic materials. The house smelled odd, a faint stench officers couldn't place. They didn't yet know it came from the crawl space, where Gacy had hidden dozens of bodies. A key break came when police interviewed Jeffrey Rignall, a survivor of Gacy's attacks. Rignall described being lured to Gacy's home in March 1978, drugged with chloroform, and assaulted. He'd escaped, but hadn't reported it until now, fearing stigma. His testimony painted Gacy as a predator who targeted young men. Another clue emerged. 3 employees of Gacy's construction business reported he'd asked them to dig trenches in the crawl space. Police suspected these were graves. On December 21st, they secured a second search warrant, this time focusing on the crawl space. What they found was horrifying. Human remains, some partially decomposed, buried in shallow graves. The stench was overwhelming. Forensic teams later identified 29 bodies in the crawl space and 4 more dumped in nearby rivers. On December 21st, 1978, police arrested Gacy at his home. He was calm, offering no resistance, as if he knew the game was up. They caught him just in time. He'd been seen disposing of items in the Des Plaines River, likely trying to destroy evidence. At the station, Gacy initially denied everything, claiming the bodies were from a construction accident or unrelated deaths. But the evidence was undeniable. The crawl space, the ring, witness statements, and items like handcuffs and a 2x4 used in his crimes. Overwhelmed, Gacy began confessing on December 22nd. He admitted to killing 33 young men and boys, detailing how he lured them, killed them, and hid their bodies. His confessions were chillingly matter-of-fact, showing no remorse. Did he feel relief at being caught, or was he still playing a role? Gacy's trial began on February 6, 1980, in Chicago's Cook County Criminal Court. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: forensic analysis of the bodies, survivor testimonies, and Gacy's own confessions. The defense argued insanity, claiming Gacy had a split personality and couldn't control his actions. Psychiatrists testified he was manipulative but legally sane, fully aware of his crimes. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before convicting Gacy on March 13, 1980, of 33 counts of murder. He was sentenced to death. Gacy was sent to Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois, to await execution on death row. The prison was a stark, high-security facility with concrete cells and strict routines. Gacy's cell was small, 8 by 10 feet, with a bunk, a sink, and a toilet. Death row inmates were isolated, allowed 1 hour of exercise daily in a caged yard. Gacy spent his days painting, often creating images of clowns or Disney characters, which he sold to outsiders. His artwork was unsettling, a reminder of his Pogo the Clown persona. He also read books, wrote letters, and gave interviews, maintaining his innocence and claiming he was framed or that others killed the victims in his home. Did he believe his own lies? He showed no remorse, never apologizing for his crimes. Instead, he leaned into his infamy, enjoying the attention from media and even pen pals. He filed multiple appeals, arguing his trial was unfair and his confessions were coerced, but every appeal failed. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy faced his final day at Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois. He spent the morning quietly, writing a few final letters to supporters who had corresponded with him over the years. He didn't touch his usual paints or books, perhaps sensing the weight of the day. A Catholic priest visited him at 8 a.m., offering spiritual guidance. Gacy, who had claimed to find religion, prayed with the priest but showed no tears or remorse. Around noon, Gacy met with his lawyer, who had fought for last-minute appeals but found no success. No family members came. No one from his past, not his ex-wives, children, or siblings, wanted to see him. The absence was stark, a reminder of the lives he'd destroyed, including his own family's. At 2 p.m., guards allowed Gacy to shower and change into a clean prison uniform. For his last meal, served at 4 p.m., Gacy requested a bucket of KFC fried chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke, a nod to his days managing Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants. At 11 p.m., guards escorted Gacy to the execution chamber, a small, sterile room with a gurney and a one-way glass window for witnesses. Victims' families, reporters, and officials filled the viewing area, their faces grim. The execution method was lethal injection, standard in Illinois at the time. As the 4 lines were inserted, Gacy looked toward the witnesses. His last words, spoken clearly, were defiant. "Kiss my ass." No apology, no regret, just the same bravado he'd shown for years. At 12:40 a.m. on May 10, 1994, the lethal injection began. A mix of sodium thiopental, pancuronium bromide, and potassium chloride flowed into his veins. The process was not smooth. One of the 4 lines clogged, delaying the procedure by several minutes as technicians adjusted it. Gacy remained conscious longer than expected, his eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Finally, at 12:58 a.m., he was pronounced dead. For the families watching, was this justice, or just the end of a long nightmare? John Wayne Gacy's life ended in a sterile chamber, but the pain he caused lives on in the memories of his victims' families. His story forces us to confront the darkness one person can hide behind a smile. What do you think drives someone like Gacy to commit such horrific acts? Can it ever be fully explained, or is evil beyond understanding? Share your thoughts below. Drop a like for us if this story intrigued you, and don't forget to subscribe for more.